So I have this kind of nutty rig that I rigged up. It's a tripod, and then I have, but it was even at its lowest, I don't know, it just didn't quite work with my cell phone quite right. So I have this nifty little bar going across and this other little tripod to get it at the right height. And but mainly I wanted to talk a little bit about things about different tools. And you'll notice that I have a fairly fancy palette here. It's porcelain, not plastic, but let's see. Where did I stick that? I think I've got a plastic one laying around or something. Yeah, here we go. I have, sorry about this if you're getting dizzy, I apologize. I have a plastic one here. The only reason I don't really use it anymore is because it's like 20 some odd years old and it's starting to get kind of fragile. At least the lid is, and these little thin edges. But this was the palette I used for, probably 15 or so years. I have another one that I used prior to that was my grandmother's. So, and it's like 50 years old. So it's not like these things die or anything or go away, or break beyond use. Well, they can if you drop them, but.
Michael, we can't see, we can only see you. At least I'm just seeing you sitting at a desk right now.
No,
that's all I can
his
see.
pallet's up in the other corner.
Huh.
Are you me, Janie?
Let's see. Oh, you know what? You may need to go to, you see where it says view on your screen?
View.
It's up in the upper right-hand corner, I think. There's a little button that says view.
No, not on my screen.
Tap on your screen, you might see it.
Yeah, maybe if you tap on it. Are you on an iPad or a tablet or something?
I'm on an iPad.
Yeah, I think it's, let's see. Let me look at my phone here.
My iPad is on the left side, top left. When you touch the screen,
It's on the back side of your what?
on the left side.
On the left side?
Top left.
Top left side.
Mine says switch to active speaker. I don't know how that is.
Yeah, you're going to want to switch to active speaker. Just trying to. The iPhone is a little bit different because it's so small compared to a tablet. Well,
active.
What's that?
I did just switch to active speaker, and again, it just shows you from the chest up.
Okay, well, let me repin. Now, can you see my palette?
Nope. Still just you.
Well, that's weird.
How about everyone else? Can everyone else see you? See the palette?
Yeah,
I can see it
on my computer. It says speaker view, but I'm pulling up my iPad to find out.
And if you go to the gallery, you can see your phone, Michael, and you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm at.
Yeah. If I go to the gallery view, you should be able to see everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Including your phone.
Right. Right.
Yeah, on the gallery, I see there's another camera on your.
Okay, so now it should be, let's see.
But right now, it's still on your, yeah.
Right,
moving.
I just.
See the green, I see the picture. In the gallery, I see the picture of and stuff, but I also see a picture of you,
Yeah,
Michael.
Yeah,
There's two.
I pinned it. Wait, is pinning it? Let me. That's right. Okay, I remember. Let me remove the pin. It's not pinning that I want. It's spotlight. There we go. Now can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now we're not, yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yep.
me. I apologize. That was my fault. I keep forgetting. It's like, you take a month off from using this and your brain goes a little mushy. And really it was a couple months because of COVID, but it's not it's not pin that I want, it's spotlight. So I remember this happened once last semester too. I don't know if you guys remember, it happened at the beginning of the semester. So to get better.
Don't apologize. You should charge more for computer class as well.
Right. So that was me. So this was the inexpensive palette. It's about $20. But you don't even need something like that. For those of you who've been in my class before, this will be a little bit of a refresher. But I have this nice porcelain palette. My mom and I took a Tom Lynch workshop together about 15 years ago, and no, not 15 years ago, like 10 years ago. And we both purchased. Mom decided there were two left. And Mom was like, "Oh man, I've always wanted a porcelain palette." And while it had never occurred to me that they had such an animal, I also wanted one. And they were on sale for less than half price or something. So we got it for about this a little bit more expensive than the plastic ones we bought. These I did have to modify this. You'll notice like all these wells right here, and there are actually porcelain wells. All these wells starting from here over, these right here are that's white silicone caulking that I put in there to make new wells. Because the way Tom designed this, it was just like one big long thing. You could lay your brushes down in there, use it as a mixing place, and I wanted more paint. He only uses like these three sides for paint, and actually, if it were up to me, this and that corner would also be wells, because I don't use these to hold brushes like he does. I had one sitting there in there because I was showing somebody how it worked, but that's the only reason that brush is sitting there. Something like if you've taken my class in person before, you'll know that I use for traveling. I use this is really a beading tray, and these are just little jars. The lids come off. When they come off, they look like this. And actually, let's see, that's Viridian green. I just put them on top of the lids. This is like the lid that goes to that color, so that color sits there. And I just sit them like this, and then I have my mixing tray, which this was clear when I got it, but I stuck some white vinyl on it, so I have a nice white mixing tray. And you can see that I don't really clean my palette off all that much because I tend to use colors that I've mixed over and over and over again. So that makes a handy palette. You definitely need a palette. You need to squeeze out. I recommend getting tube paint like this. So this is a paint Prussian blue from Cheap Joe's. It's called American Journey. And then like here is burnt sienna from Holbein. That also I purchased from Cheap Joe's. This Pyro Orange that I like to use is from Daniel Smith. So that's a whole other supply. I don't know that Cheap Joe's carries Daniel Smith. I think you have to buy it directly from their company. But so I buy paint by the tube. I like it better. It's smoother and creamier. And then I fill up. You'll notice that I fill up a well when I put paint. Sorry, I had the hiccups. I ate that apple before class too fast. So I fill a well up pretty good with paint. Because with watercolor, unlike acrylics or oils, you can reconstitute watercolor. I mean, I can get this wet. I've got it on my finger. So before, you know, I paint, obviously I put water in my my palette. But anything will work for a palette. You don't necessarily have to, you don't necessarily have to have a fancy porcelain palette. You can use ice cube trays and an old white plate. You could get like a Corel, like if you have some of those Corel paint or Corel, is it Corel plates?
Yes.
Oh, mhm.
Yeah, you have like a mismatched one of those or something. I have all my Aunt Mary Ann's old Corel plates, and they have a green stripe around them. And then I had this one that's like got a blue stripe. So if that bothered me, I could use that mismatched plate as a nice mixing tray. Stuff like that. You don't have to spend a lot on a palette. Ice cube trays from the dollar store, that kind of thing. And then I have, you'll see, I have several, like these are my mom's brushes, but I'm gonna put this back up here. I have this brush holder, and I have more brushes in this thing. That's just, I have all these brushes just to make me look like an artist. The majority of the brushes I use are these four right here. And really I could get by with like these two. This is a number 8 round, or no, I'm sorry, this is a number 10 round. This is a number 8 round, and this is a number 6 round. You see here, I have a 14 round, which is pretty big. I even have a 38 round, which is really big. And trust me, even though it doesn't look like it right now, it gets to a really nice fine point. But you don't need all these fancy brushes. What is this one? This is an 18. So I have a 14 and 18, 30, 38. So I have some big brushes, and really you could get by with just one brush, one round, pretty decent size, like an 8 or a 10 round brush. You could get by with just that. I like to have a flat brush as well. I have this this 1-inch flat. 1-inch flats come in a variety of styles. This one has a flat handle, as you can see. And I like that, but I also have this one, which is a 1-inch with a long round handle, which I used for years. The only reason I kind of stopped using it is because it's a Kolinsky Sable brush, and it was really, really expensive, and it started showing signs of wear. So I kind of retired it because this was like I didn't pay full price for it, but I think when it was new, it was, I don't know, $60 or something. I think I bought it for half price, but still, that's a $30 brush. This is a $15 brush. I've had this one almost as long as I've had this one, because this I stopped using at about 3 years, and I started using this one. So I've had this probably 12 years or so, and it's a great brush. I'll tell you the brands that I like. You don't necessarily have to get these brands, although these Low Cornell, let me see if I can get that to focus. Can you read that? I don't know that you can. It's not wanting to focus.
No.
They're maybe on a bigger brush. Let's see.
Yes, yes.
You see that? Yeah. It says Low Cornell. These are the 70-20 Ultra rounds. They're really affordable. I'm not an advertisement for them, so by all means, don't feel like you have to get this particular brand. This is just one I really like. I will say that Master's Touch, which you can get at Hobby Lobby, makes some decent watercolor brushes. There's nothing wrong with them. These I ordered. In fact, they used to sell these at Hobby Lobby, these Low Cornells. and then they quit carrying them. But you can get them from like Cheap Joe's or Jerry's Artorama. This was a Holbein paintbrush that they sent me for free, but I really liked it. Normally, I was using this tin from Low Cornell, but I have this Holbein brush that they gave me for free, and it's pretty nice. It's a gold 001. I don't know that it says not for resale. I'm assuming it was a free sample. I don't know if they're getting into the brush making market. I mostly use Holbein paints. And so when I ordered a bunch of paint, they sent me a free brush. What was it? Who was it that got one last semester too?
It was Melanie.
Melanie, that's right. Melanie got one of our other students that she got one of these for ordering a bunch of paint too. So I don't know if they were just sending out samples, trying to, because they never asked me for feedback on it either. So I'm not entirely sure.
Michael,
yeah.
are the brushes made out of any particular something?
So these are all synthetic brushes,
Okay.
and they hold up a little bit better. I like synthetic brushes. The reason I would have this, like this Kolinsky Sable, let's see, this one's also a Kolinsky Sable. It's a little hard to see with all these other brushes behind them. This is a Kolinsky Sable liner. So you can see it has a really long hair in the bristle. It's an 8 round, but it's super long. These are natural fiber, so they're an actual sable animal that they use. This one's also a Kolinsky Sable. They're an actual animal. One of the, I don't know exactly if they kill the animal or not, so I have some issues with just killing an animal just for its tail hair to make a brush. Seems kind of cruel, but I mean, they're kind of, they're like a weasel or a ferret, sables. Everybody knows what those are. So they're really expensive, and they don't last as long as synthetic brushes. Synthetic brushes are generally cheaper. So I don't use these very often. Mostly I use them if I'm painting on watercolor canvas instead of watercolor paper, because they work better on watercolor canvas than synthetic brushes do on watercolor. So it makes sense to use a natural fiber brush. You don't necessarily have to go with Kolinsky Sable. That's the most expensive and softest. There's a kind of a regular sable. There's a squirrel. Although they're not quite as soft and fine. There's a few different choices there, but these are all a synthetic fiber. They're nice and soft. You can see it's nice and soft. Same with this one. This is a little stiffer than, say, that Kolinsky Sable 1-inch flat, but if you're just getting started out, I'd say buy the least expensive.
Okay.
Right? You can get by with inexpensive brushes. So, and by get by, I mean you can actually do really well with lesser priced brushes. You don't need to buy a. Dwight Loring told me a story one time. He was at an art show and he was, it was like a big trade show, and he walked around. He found this brush that he loved, and it was about this size. It was a little bit bigger, and it was a round. And he walked around for 2 or 3 hours carrying it, thinking he was going to buy it. And it was like $150 or something for this crazy brush. And when he got back to check out, he goes, I don't need to spend $150. I don't need that brush. So he went and put it back. But he was tempted by the brush. I think we all like to collect art supplies. It makes us feel like real artists. So that's why I have all these. But really, you can get by with 1 or 2 brushes for it the most. But you don't necessarily need need all 4 of these. You know, if you wanted to get rid of the 8 and just have like a, what was this, a 6 and a 10, or if you didn't feel comfortable with the 10, which is a little bit larger, and wanted to go with a 6 and an 8, you could do that too. So it's really up to you. But don't go out spending a bazillion dollars on brushes. Cause I have all these. I have these. Wait, where did it go? Oh, oops. Let's see. There we go. I have all these. And then I have a case behind me that if, we were in the other view, you'd see there's a big toolbox thingamajigger behind me that has even more brushes in it. Let's see, there we go. So you don't need all these brushes. But again, if you go to Hobby Lobby, Master's Touch actually has some pretty decent brushes. This is where I keep most of my beat up brushes. Like this one, if you look closely, you can see it's got chunks where I was not nice to this brush apparently at some point in life, probably when I was in college. I didn't appreciate how expensive these are. This is a natural fiber. It's not a Kolinsky Sable, but it is a natural fiber brush. This one's in a little better shape. It's about the same age. It's a 3/4 inch brush. But I keep them because they're still useful. Here's a craft brush. It's Royal Crafter's Choice 3/4 inch flat that I bought from Hobby Lobby because I like the handle, and it has a really nice bristle, and I've actually painted paintings with this, and it's a great little brush. So if you go and find a Master's Touch you like, I thought, here's another craft brush that I bought at Hobby Lobby. I thought I had a Master's Touch, but I guess I don't. Anyway, they're decent brushes. One thing, and this is an idea again from Dwight Line that he gave me, if anybody knows him, he gave me this idea. When he went shopping at Hobby Lobby for a brush, he would, they come generally with these little plastic doohickeys on them, and they've got a nice sharp, there we go, they've got a nice sharp point from the factory. Like this one's never been used yet. He would take this off, walk over to the water fountain, get it wet, wash out all the sort of stuff that's holding it stiff, and then hit it on his finger and see how it snapped back, if it snapped back into a point. And if it did, then he'd buy it. Otherwise, he'd form it back into a point, stick the little plastic thing, which now I can't get back on there. There we go. He'd stick the little plastic thing back on there and put it back up on the shelf. So you can, if you're buying brushes in person, you can test them out. Wait, was this a Master's Touch? No, it was a Royal Majestic. Sorry. I keep thinking I have one. Anyway, enough about brushes. Let's see, I talked about paint. Again, I like Holbein paint, but you don't necessarily have to buy a Holbein. I just happen to like it. I also like, like I said, American Journey, which is from Cheap Joe's. The reason I like Holbein, if you go to Hobby Lobby, and I don't know if I have one. Yeah, here you go. If you go to Hobby Lobby, this is about the size of the tube you can get, if that. Some are even smaller, and this is 0.3 fluid ounces or 10 milliliters. If I order from Cheap Joe's, if I order Holbein, these are 15 milliliters, which is what you can get from Holbein. They don't make a bigger tube. But then American Journey brand gives you these 37 milliliter tubes. And I don't have one that's, this one's the closest one full that I have. But these are 37 milliliters. So, and these usually are about the same price as, you know, something from Holbein, which is this size, and they're sometimes less expensive than the cheap paint that they sell at Hobby Lobby that comes in these 10 or I think they also sell like an 8 milliliter tube. They sell pretty small tubes of watercolor paint there.
They sell Winsor Newton too, because that's what
Yeah, they sell Winsor Newton, which is not my favorite brand of paint, but there's nothing wrong with it. I have a few somewhere in here. I have a few Winsor Newton. That Van Gogh that I was holding up, that little tiny tube, I've had that for I don't know how many years. This is like a student grade from, I think Grumbacher owns this brand. And if I speak, you can see it's hardened in the tube, which is fine. You know, if I ever want to use this Azo yellow, my plan is just to cut the tube, split it open, and stick the big chunk of paint in one of my wells, and then I'll have some Azo yellow. The problem that I've found with Van Gogh brand is it Grumbacher? I can't remember who owns this. They're being student grade. I mean, it says it's super fine quality, but it's more of a student grade, and they're not as light fast as some others. So I would say buy the best paint you can get. These are considered professional. You know, this American Journey is considered professional watercolor. It's a lot more light fast than some of the other brands. Same with Holbein. Daniel Smith is very light fast. So just something to think about when you're picking out paints. I do use a lot of I do use a lot of Cheap Joe's brand. Mostly what I've got on my palette is Holbein, but then I have a whole slew of Cheap Joe's brand and other brands as well. So I think I've talked enough about paint, and I thought I'd grab.
Can I ask a question, Michael?
Yeah.
Are we going to get to doing any painting tonight? Because I have a 7 o'clock meeting that I'll go to if we're not going to get to that.
I was going to do a quick demo in Skies, but if you want to go to your meeting, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't hurt you or anything to miss today. Yeah, so if you want to, because we won't start a project painting until next week.
Okay. Well, I will see you next week then.
And I'm recording this, so you'll be able to watch it anyway if you want.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Hi.
So this is a brand new pad. I actually have a piece of paper already pulled out somewhere, I guess, or I thought I did. Maybe I don't. Well, we'll just. I think I gave it away. Oh, somebody came in and they were. I gave them a piece of my paper. Oh no, here it is. Yeah. So this is the page. So I generally use Arches brand. Now this is a handy pad. I only buy these because they're a handy size for teaching. Normally I paint with, and I'll just take you on a little walkabout here. Normally I paint with I buy paper like in a full sheet so you can see. You see how big that is? It's pretty large sheet of paper. So normally I'll use sheets like that, and I'll break them down into smaller pieces if I need to. Sorry if I made you guys dizzy. But for teaching, I like this size. It's a 9 by 12. If I were you guys, I would buy a sheet of paper You can buy arches from Hobby Lobby. And I would buy one of those big ones because it's about, well, I don't even know how much it is anymore. It used to be about $15 or $16. It may have gone up now because I know these pads from Hobby Lobby, when they have them in stock, are about $20. I order them from Cheap Joe's and they're like $11. And they come with 12 sheets of paper. This is 140 weight arches, cold pressed cotton rag paper. So it's made from cotton. It's not actually made from wood pulp. I would recommend buying Arches brand paper. Again, I'm not getting paid by Arches. If I was, I would let you know. I'm going to open this up. You can also buy these by the block. I have one of those somewhere floating around, a block of paper. And the only difference is that instead of being like a pad, like you can open this up like this, it's sealed on all four sides except for a little bit where you stick a palette knife in and slide it around to take that piece off. And you can paint directly on the pad. I really like these pads though. Arches has been making paper since, when was it? I think it was 1492 is when they started making paper. So they're really good at it, which is funny because they're now owned by Canson, I think. Yeah. Who's been making paper since 15 something. But Canson is terrible at making paper. Maybe they're not owned by them anymore. This does not have the Canson label on it, whereas other pads I had, maybe they separated out. Anyway, I don't like Canson paper. They sell pads of it at Hobby Lobby. They sell pads of Master's Touch paper at Hobby Lobby. They sell pads of Strathmore paper at Hobby Lobby. Don't buy any of those. If you're going to buy paper from Hobby Lobby, go to the single sheets and look for Arches because they'll have it labeled. Just buy a sheet of 140 pound. Those used to be like $7, but I'd be willing to bet they're more like $15. But again, they're a huge. They're bigger than I can show you with my hands. They're like this is 9 by 12 inches. They're how big are they? They're, let's see, this is 15 by 27. I think they're 30 by 28, something like in that neighborhood. Yeah, this is 16 by 28. So yeah, they're like 30 by 28 inches. So it's a really big, and you can break those down, and I can demonstrate that. If anybody gets some like that, I'll demonstrate how to tear it for you. Otherwise, these pads are nice. I like them, but just make sure you get a good brand like Arches. Fabriano, Tom Lynch, who I think fairly highly of as an artist, and I've taken his workshop a number of times. He's switched over from a paper he used to use to using Fabriano Ultra White watercolor paper. I've never used it, but I've watched him do demos on it, and it seems like it works well. The reason, like you can get by with buying cheap brushes, you can get by with buying fairly cheap paints. You can get by with, a palette made out of ice cube trays. But life is too short to paint on crappy paper. Don't buy cheap paper. Spring for the Arches, you won't regret it. Or Fabriano. I mean, the Fabriano Ultra White looks good. I have used their regular paper, the Fabriano paper, but I don't, and it's pretty good. So I'm assuming since it's pretty decent, what am I trying to say? I'm fairly certain that the Ultra White is pretty good too.
When it cuts off, it just cuts off. Okay, that's fine, honey. Go ahead.
So again, if you're going to spring for anything, spring for the good paper. Don't worry about expensive brushes. Don't worry about expensive paint or an expensive palette. Any of that kind of stuff. You can see like the water deals that I use. This is an old ocean spray bottle that I cut the top off of. The only reason I had this fancy bucket is because I took a Tom Lynch workshop and he gave everybody one of those buckets. Although those are like $2 at Home Depot, so they're not exactly expensive either. I've used old, like here, this jar used to be one of my brush jars, and it's an old pickle jar. I just liked it because it had the wide mouth, and now it holds stuff. So, you know, most of the stuff you can buy pretty cheaply. I use this little guy. Everybody should know what this is. I bought it at a pharmacy. Actually, this is one that my mom bought, but we switched because she didn't like this one at the time. So I gave her one that I had, but you can buy them at the pharmacy, and essentially I just use them to fill my, you know, I use it to fill my palette with water. So I, you know, I just suck up the water from my bucket and wet my paints with it. Also, occasionally, you know, I'll use some natural sponges. This was one sponge, so there's a bunch of pieces here. It was one big sponge that I broke in half. My mom got half of it. I bought it at Hobby Lobby, gave half to my mom, and I kept half of it. So that's that. And then these are inexpensive, those, what are they called? The magic eraser sponges. These are really handy if you're having trouble lifting something. If you get it wet and lightly use it, you can actually lift watercolor off your paper without damaging your paper. And then I've just cut it up into little shapes. So that's what that is. I have several floating around here. And I also have a bunch of, I don't have them out here, but I have a bunch of, you know, I bought these at the dollar store. They're not even the name brand magic eraser. They're like generic ones that I bought at the dollar store for probably $1. And I got a bunch of them because I gave several away. This is just one that you know, this is just one single sponge that I cut up into different shapes. So, oh, here we go. And then I think I was at Big Lots or something, and I bought a bunch of these makeup sponges for $1. They're pretty handy for all sorts of stuff, cleaning, you know, lifting. You can use them for lifting paint off your paper, cleaning, you know, cleaning up your palette or any number of things. So anyway, that's what this is. It's like a I guess a makeup. I don't know. It was in the cosmetics section, and I was looking for sponges, and originally it was white. Obviously, it's been stained by paint now, but most women should probably be familiar with this type of sponge. But again, I bought it at the dollar store or maybe Big Lots or something for like $1. Found another one of those. So that's pretty much it for, and I also use occasionally some masking fluid. This is Fine Line brand. It's from Hobby Lobby. It comes with an applicator pen. Let me see if I can get this. Sorry. So it has a little, let's see if you can see that. Yeah, you can kind of see it has a little applicator pin that's hollow. It's not wanting to focus on that, but it's hollow, and you put that cap on there. The only reason I take it off is I take it off and clean it out each time because it gets gunked up pretty easily with the masking fluid. But essentially, this is just liquid masking tape. If I'm in a hurry or I don't want to make you guys wait for it to you know, or if I'm doing some large space, I'll just use masking tape and an X-Acto knife to cut it out. This is what the masking fluid looks like when you pull it up off of the paper. So this is probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 paintings worth of masking fluid. You can buy a rubber cement remover square. Some masking fluid kits come with one of these. This one is probably like 10 years old. And I have another one that is now round that's like 20 years old.
What is that?
It's a rubber cement remover. So they're square, and this one, they're this light kind of beigey, yellowy color. This has a bunch of, it's picked up paint, so it's stained, but this you use to remove the liquid masking fluid once it's dry and once your painting's dry. And if we use that, I'll go into it. You don't necessarily need it, but you can buy it at Hobby Lobby. You don't necessarily have to buy the Mask Pen brand either. You can get it in jars. Some come with applicators. I don't recommend using a paintbrush necessarily to apply it. Unless, I don't know, I had a student once who bought like the really cheap model paint brushes, the super cheap one, and she just use it once and then toss it. Because the masking fluid will gunk up your bristles on your brush. If you have an old brush and you want to use a brush, dip it in like Joy or Dawn dishwashing detergent. Well, it doesn't matter which kind of dishwashing detergent. I use Dawn because it's the one I'm not allergic to. And that'll protect the paint from getting in all the bristles. Or I mean, not the paint, the masking fluid, but once you kind of use a brush for masking fluid, it kind of becomes your masking fluid brush. I bought these cool. This is a rubber tipped brush. I don't even know what you technically use them for. I bought a set of like 3 of them or something, I think. Here's another one. That this one's got a sort of a pointed tip. I found that actually this little chisel tip works the best. But I'll use these to apply it because they're rubber and the masking fluid, once it dries, just, peels off. So it's kind of nice. And these I got at Hobby Lobby. They weren't but a couple of bucks. So you don't necessarily need to go out and buy, like I said, masking fluid and special brush thingies. I just bought them because I wanted to try them out. And now I don't know where. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I got another one there. And then I thought, well, if I ever needed to apply it really big, I bought myself a 1-inch rubber brush just to try it out. Again, they weren't very expensive. This came as a set of 3, and then this was separate. But you don't necessarily need those. Just I found them handy for applying masking fluid. See if I can get this thing back in there. I'll deal with that later. And occasionally I will use, and it's way over here, it's empty right now. I'll use something like this, a spray bottle for water. Again, I think I bought this at Hobby Lobby. I did. For $2.49, and the sticker's still on there, but it's probably 10 years old. If you can find those really old pump style Windex bottles that they don't make anymore, those are really great. I've been looking for, I keep asking people I know, who would have had Windex back when they made those pump style Windex bottles, if they have one floating around. Because I would like to get one, but those are pretty handy. So that's pretty much it for supplies, I think. Again, don't feel bad about buying inexpensive brushes, less expensive paint, making up your own palette from something, unless you have one. If you have a palette and you like it, then, by all means use it. I have this porcelain one. I love it. And when I'm at my studio, I use it. But when I was traveling to teach, I got tired of hauling it because it's super heavy. I mean, it's not super heavy, but it's got some heft to it. And when you got everything else packed into your bag, the less weight, the better. Plus, ceramic. So if I dropped it, it could break. Whereas those little paint tray, the little beading jars are really great for traveling. They have lids. They still kind of spill out a little bit, but they have lids. They're all self-contained. They're super lightweight. And as you can see, I have even more paint in that palette setup because I have 2 of those than I have in my regular palette. So here's my regular palette, and these are supplemental colors that I don't have in my regular palette that I would take to art, to painting class. So I keep them out when I'm painting here in the studio. I also have, this is a fine mist sprayer. I'm not going to go into these other, this is a completely different sprayer. Well, and I may go into these. Don't write Holbein down because they don't make the right nozzle anymore. But this is a fine mist sprayer. I got this for a couple bucks at Hobby Lobby, I'm pretty sure. And it has, I think now it has, normally it has cobalt blue in it, but I think now I have, I think is that ultramarine blue? That may be ultramarine. I can't remember what I have in it right now. But essentially, this is just paint and water mixed up together. And when we get into it, I'll tell you what I use this for. And again, this is an optional thing to do something like this. You don't necessarily have to. Normally, I like to have it in a bottle that's this same size, and I have a fine mist sprayer nozzle for these kinds of bottles, but it's clogged up, and I need to soak it in vinegar. That's this one normally fits on. And it's a fine mist sprayer, but it's, like I said, it's clogged up. So that's kind of it. Don't worry about, I know I picked this out. This is called a watercolor spray bottle. You'll notice the top of it has a little arrow with a dot behind it. If you can find any spray bottles that have that arrow and dot behind it on the little pump nozzle, these are awesome for a technique that I don't normally teach unless we're in person, because it's hard to find these bottles. Well, it's not anymore. In fact, I should send that link out again this semester for where you can get them now. Holbein used to make them. That's why I have all these, but they don't anymore. Yeah, you can see that there's that same arrow with the dot behind it, and that just gives it a varied pattern. It's a multi-dot size pattern. So you get little tiny dots, and you get bigger dots and medium-sized dots. Whereas with a fine mist sprayer, it's all just a fine mist. Anyway, that's a technique I do like to teach, but when we're not in person, if not everybody has those spray bottles, it's kind of hard. But I will send the link out in case you ever want to buy some and try it out. So I think, does anybody, whoops. Come on. Does anybody have any questions? Other than, why did you talk so long? Feel free, at any time, if because I've given you a lot of information. Feel free to, if you can't remember something I said, just ask again. I will real quickly show you a couple more tools that I use a lot. So I use a drawing pencil. This one's gotten really short, so I have this little pencil extender because I like those. Well, I don't like to waste pencils. This one doesn't fit in that, but it's also very short. So I have several drawing pencils. I use an X-Acto knife. And the reason so many are in here is because I'm used to going to class and I bring several so that that if we're using the X-Acto knife for something, you guys can borrow mine. That's why I have so many. Also why I have so many pencils, is in case somebody needs to borrow one. I have a variety of erasers, which I hardly ever use. I do like these white rubber, these like this Mars plastic a lot. I do like these art gum erasers. That's what this used to be. It looks like a rock, but it actually used to be one of those. It's really old. This is probably 45 years old. And it still works as an eraser. It's just kind of weird. That's another one of these white rubber erasers. I even have one of these guys. Whoa, yeah, you can see. Okay. One of these guys, although I rarely use it on watercolors. Predominantly, I use what's called a kneaded eraser, and they come in little gray squares. And then, you know, they're stretchy. It's kind of like gum or something, except for not as sticky. This one's a little bit newer. This one's like 15 years old, so it's like kind of harder, and it doesn't stretch as much. And it's probably going to have to be retired fairly soon, because you can see this one's light gray and this one's dark gray. It has more graphite in it. Although what's cool is, you know, this one has a bit of graphite in it, but if you kind of stretch it out a little bit, it kind of cleans that area, and you can get a nice clean area. And the cool thing about these is it doesn't leave little crumblies on your paper. It's fairly soft on your paper. So I like these kneaded erasers better than the other kinds. So I use those. And now I think I am really done. Oh, these are credit card samples that, you know, you get in the mail. These guys really, really want me to buy a new car, and I don't want to. But I saved them. This is a key card from a motel from the Best Western I stayed at somewhere. They make handy tools for scraping and creating like tree bark, which I'll show you at some point. So if you have an old, old expired library card, or a rewards card that you don't use anymore, or accidentally took the hotel key with you when you checked out, these are all good, or get, credit card crap plastic. Although they've started sending paper ones now. Everybody who wants me to get a credit card nowadays, these guys think I'm a veteran. I think it's because my dad's a veteran and they get us mixed up. But again, these are just plastic, plastic cards. And if we're ever able to meet in person again, I have a whole slew of samples of actually plastic business cards that I got at a thing that make, let's see if I can find those. They make really handy tools. And generally, I will save, I don't know what I did with them. I was cleaning the other day, not that you can tell. And put them some, yeah, there we go. So these are samples of business cards that I got at Adobe Max. Some printer, anyway, they can print these plastic business cards. If you ever come across one of these make really great water, tools just like those. So that's what these are. I've saved them. They were business card samples that some printer gave out, and I grabbed a handful of them because I was like, hey, I can use those for something totally unrelated. So no questions, concerns? Okay. Well, for those of you who want, if you don't have supplies, it's okay. You can just watch along with me. And I'm gonna, and like I said, I'm recording this, so I'll post it so you guys can watch it. I generally post these on YouTube, but I put them on private so that only people with the link can watch them. And you guys are the only people that I give the link to. People who were in the class. So you can go back. They're there forever. So you can go back and watch them over and over and over again if you want. And if we're ever meeting in person again, my plan is to continue to film classes like this, whether it's with Zoom or not, I don't know, but
Okay, babe.
where was I going with that? But anyway, my plan is to continue to record them because it's kind of a handy thing. I know, if you miss a class or whatever, it's nice to be able to go back and watch it at least. So what I'm going to do is, I did forget one thing, and that's masking tape. Masking tape is your friend too. I have several sizes. These are the only two I could find right at the moment, but I have another one that's kind of middle. This is really, really fat. What is this, 2 inches, I think? And then I have like an 1.5 inches, and then I have this inch masking tape. One thing that it's really good for, oh, man, I'm forgetting all sorts of stuff. I keep saying, oh, I apologize. Another thing you're gonna want, and I'll just, before I get to the masking tape, I'm gonna talk about a drawing board. I have, this is called Gator board, and it's 16 inches by 28 inches. It's like foam core, but instead of paper on the outside, it's plastic. Although if you can find a thick piece of foam core, or you take a couple pieces of foam core and glue them together, that works pretty well as too. The only reason I suggest this kind of stuff is because it's super lightweight. So if you're carrying it anywhere, like I'm carrying stuff to and from class all the time, the lighter the better. And also some sort of something. So in this case, I have this little triangle made out of mat board. And Carl Purcell, I took his workshop and he gave a bunch of us these little guys. I used to have like 3 or 4 of them, and I've given most of them away because you really only need one. Anyway,
What kind of board is it?
this is called Gator board. You don't necessarily need Gator board if you have a piece of masonite, or like here's a wooden drawing board that I used for years. I have several of those. And it's just a thin piece of plywood that's pretty smooth. It's got a nice smooth finish on both sides. That'll work. The Gator board you can get from sign companies. So if you went to Ram Signs or San Juan Signs, they use this for indoor signage a lot. So they'll have scraps that they might sell you. This I ordered from Cheap Joe's. I have 2 of them, and my mom ordered 2. Normally when they come, let's see, I'll flip this over. This one snapped. That's why it's got tape here. They're white when they come to you. I have one of my mom's. So this is what they look like when you get them. They're bright white, but this is, and they're much more square. You can see mine's been beaten up quite a bit. This one my mom never used, hardly, because it's pretty clean. The only reason it's kind of dirty is because it got kind of moved around at her house. But it's a hard plastic coating instead of paper. I don't know if you can see there, it got pushed in. And so it's waterproof, unlike mat or foam core, which is not waterproof. So that's why I like it. But you could, if you had some gesso lying around, because you paint in acrylics or oils as well, you could take a piece of foam core. You can find thicker foam core. I think they sell it at Hobby Lobby in pieces about this size. And you could coat that with gesso, which is actually what I did on this side. I was trying something out. So I coated this side with gesso just for giggles. Just because it was really dark blue, and then I painted it white, and now it's getting back to being dark blue again. Like I said, a piece of thick foam core would work, and you could paint it with gesso and it'd be waterproof. I think Janie uses foam core. She just uses thin foam core, and it works pretty well for her. She's usually painting in fairly small pieces, so it doesn't buckle. But it's nice to be able to tape your piece down to something, to something. What am I trying to say? It's nice to tape your piece down to something and then be able to lift it up at an angle. That way we can use gravity to our benefit. So to get back to the tape, if you have one of these large rolls of tape, it also makes a nice, you can put it underneath the top of your board, your drawing board, and keep your paper at a slight angle. I used to paint flat, and once I learned how to let gravity do some work for me, my painting increased, or my paintings got much better. Like my skill increased, and I really enjoyed the kind of science part of of how gravity works. So what I'm going to do is I have this sheet of paper. I thought I'd do a quick sky demonstration for everybody. And if you have your supplies and you want to paint along with me, you're more than welcome to. If you don't have anything set up to use, that's okay too. You can just watch along, and then you'll be free to watch this anytime you want on YouTube. So I'm just going to take this off. And I thought I'd do a sky demonstration just because it's a little more fun than some of the stuff that I've done on opening, on the first day. And generally, I don't paint skies first. I generally paint them last, but unless the sky is what I'm going to paint, and in this case, I'm just going to make it up. I spend a lot of time studying clouds. I take a lot of pictures of clouds and skies and sunsets and different times of day, and so I'm fairly familiar with clouds. I'll show you a couple of other paintings that started out as before I get started out as sky demonstrations, and both of these. So I have this one here. It was kind of a wacky abstract sky that I showed a class. And then I just added, it's a little hard to tell from the glare, but I just added this silhouette of like a building and a fence in front. And then I added, the sky was painted first. I even added this little bluff back in here later. I added that, and then I went over everything with this dark blue. And then this is another one that I did. I painted that sky first, and then I went back in and was like thinking, hey, that kind of looks like, maybe it's over the ocean or something. So I decided to paint this kind of island scene. So these are two cases where I did paint the sky first. This one, the sky was painted last. That one over there, the sky was painted last. So in general, I paint the sky last, but in those two instances, I painted it first. So I thought it'd be fun to do that today. Anybody have any questions? If I'm going too fast, yell at me. Okay. So it dawned on me the other day, I was watching somebody, I was watching a painting demonstration on YouTube, and it dawned on me that I never explained something when I paint skies, which is why I tend to paint them upside down to start with. And generally, because I'm painting skies last, let me grab a sample painting. This one. So this one's good because it has some of the things that I was trying not to do going on in it. So I have this little painting, which is actually a master study of one that is bigger hanging up behind me. You know, I painted all of this stuff in the foreground and the midground first, and then I painted this sky, including this stuff, this rainy bit, last. And I flipped it around and painted it upside down. And the reason I do that is so it still happened on me, but that was because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing right here. See this little line of dark that's, I don't know how visible that is. You can kind of see there's this dark line going along on the top of that hill or mountain back there. That is because paint got up and stopped right there. And then because there was more paint in the water, you can see that there was more paint right there. You can see there was more water right here. That's why it's much lighter. It formed that line. Now I could go in there and lift that out, but I don't really, it doesn't bother me too much because it's really only about there. You know, there's a little bit more right there, but the reason I paint them upside down is so that the water and paint are all flowing this way. So I can minimize these kinds of lines that happen. So I wanted to talk about that really quick first. And I've got this taped onto my board. And I don't want you to be confused because I'm going to paint, I'm going to do the painting, and the sky's going to be here, not here. So I wanted you to know why I was doing that. And again, I'm just making this up. There's nothing really to look at. And I'm going to use some specialized tools. That's a roll of toilet paper, which actually is a pretty hot commodity sometimes right now. For Christmas, I gave everybody in the studio a roll of this for Christmas. But you can also use, like this is actually kind of an expensive roll. If I were buying toilet paper to paint with normally, I would go buy the cheapest dollar store toilet paper that I could find. Or steal it from motels. You could use Kleenex. I have Kleenex here. This is actually Kleenex brand Kleenex. But again, if I were buying, this just I have here because my nose was running, but I do grab it and use it to paint with as well. But normally I will buy the cheapest facial tissue, I should say, from the dollar store, as long as it doesn't have any perfumes in it or any lotion or any, you know, those like Puff Plus you can't use. But if you buy cheap facial tissue at the dollar store, it's perfect for what we're going to do tonight. Okay. So I am going to think about where I want, since this is mostly this painting, and I'm not going to finish it tonight. I'm not going to worry about what's going on at the ground level. But I want to kind of figure out how big the sky is. It's going to be 2/3 of the painting. So I want to give myself kind of a line. So I'm just going to kind of put this light pencil line. I don't even know if you can see that light pencil line. Can you? Maybe. I'm going to put this light pencil line across right there so I can tell. Let's see if yeah, there you go. I just put that, and it's, you know, this is the bottom third of my paper. Or, well, it could have been the top third, but I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. So now I'm going to flip this around, and I'm not going to put anything everything down here is going to be fairly light for the most part. I'm not going to worry about too much detail. If I pass over this, that's okay. But this is generally the area where I'm going to stop my sky. So I have a nice, clean, deep bucket of water. And the reason I like deep buckets is because if I wash my brush out up here, all the paint floats all the way to the, it sinks to the bottom, and the top little bit of water is still clean. So that's why I like to use a deep bucket, but whatever you're comfortable with using is fine. You don't necessarily have to have the exact same stuff as I do. And what I'm going to do is take clean water and my 1-inch round brush, not 1-inch round brush, my 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to just paint water on the paper. And this is a technique called wet in wet. So I'm just going to, and if you're paying attention, you can see that I went over that line, and that's okay. I'm just painting this whole piece of paper here with clean water. I like to use wet on wet for skies. It's a fun technique. It lets you get a lot of fuzzy shapes like clouds. Other times I'll use wet and wet as if I'm doing, there's that evergreen tree that's kind of fuzzy looking. If I'm doing something like that, I will use wet and wet just so I get that real fuzzy effect of the pine branches coming out. But mostly I paint wet on dry, or even dry brushing, which we'll get into later. But you can see I've got a fair amount of water. This paper's pretty well saturated. And now I can start with my color choices. So I'm going to kind of angle this so you can see both my palette, or mostly my most of my palette, and the paper as well. Oh, and I didn't talk about this. This is a handy tool if you got an old toothbrush laying around. This is also a good tool, which I'll show you at some point as well. A bunch of dust. I think the cat was walking through here and picked stuff up on its feet. So you might be thinking, well, gee, you got a really dirty palette over there, all sorts of color floating around. But actually, if I get fresh paint, which I'm going to use this peacock blue, I'm just going to put some clean peacock blue down on that, and that is mostly what I'm going to end up with. So I have a fair amount of peacock blue sitting there, and I want to add some more water to that. So I have a good puddle of it's actually mostly water. And when you're thinking about painting with watercolors, you want to think about it as like if it was a can of soup and you're looking at the ingredients. Hopefully, if you have a chicken noodle soup, you look at the ingredients and the first ingredient is chicken. If it's salt, then you're in trouble. But you'll know that when you're looking at the list of ingredients, that the first thing listed is the most prevalent thing in that whatever you're, like in the soup that you're looking at. So if you think of watercolor the same way, water is the first thing in the name watercolor. So use more water than paint. So you can see I have a pretty big puddle here of paint and water. And again, it's mostly water. And I'm just going to come in and paint this peacock blue, no particular shape. I'm going to come in like that. I'm going to wet that a little bit more there so it actually goes up into, it won't matter that I've got stuff there because I'm not really going to paint much beyond my spot here, but I decided to get that wet up there too. I'm going to paint this wet wash on top of my wet paper. Mostly, I'm just kind of covering the paper, not worrying about too much about shape or anything like that. I've got some white spots left in there. That's okay. Drop a little more paint up in here. And for the first little bit, that's okay. Because now is where the specialized tool, patent pending, comes in place. I'm going to take some toilet paper, about like that, and I'm going to wad it up into a cloud shape. So I don't want to wad it up and just have a little dot like this. I want to make it look semi-cloud shaped. So here I have this kind of, that feels like a good cloud shape. Kind of fat in the middle, gets kind of skinny on the side. Maybe it's fat over here. It doesn't matter, but it's going to be a large thing that I'm going to hit with this on this paper. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a cloud right there. And you can see I picked up all that paint that was on the paper. Then I'm going to rotate so I have a clean section of toilet paper. And I'm going to come in right here with a little bit more. Now, these will just look like blobs right now, but in a little while, they'll look much better. Let's see. Got a little bit of a buckle going on there, and that's okay. Let's see. I'm going to pull this up into there. So I just kind of rotated my brush, or my paper. You can see it's just a, kind of a random wad of toilet paper, but it made this interesting shape. I like that little bit of dark in there. Let's see, maybe I'll open it up a little bit. I got some clean toilet paper again, and maybe right here. I don't like that shape, so I'm gonna find a clean section and pull that across like that. So now I have kind of some interesting cloud shapes. Again, this is just shapes I've made up. They're not based on anything real. I'm gonna put a little bit right there, kind of flatten that out at the bottom. So you can see I've now kind of made these cool cloud shapes. Just so that like here, I've got this pretty big puddle, and eventually this will start running. It'll run into my lap, or it'll start fusing back up the paper, because as this dries, it'll start pulling that water back up. So I'm just going to pick up this excess water here. With the toilet paper, and I'm done with that.
What color was the blue?
That was peacock blue, but if you have something like cobalt blue, that's a nice blue. Ultramarine blue is a nice blue. Anything like that, kind of a nice light. Even a cerulean blue would be a nice sky blue.
Okay.
I just happen to be using peacock blue because I like it, and it makes a nice sky blue, and I happen to have it. And that's what this is right here. This is cerulean blue right there. It's a little hard to tell on camera. It looks darker, but it's not. This actually looks much darker than it is. And so I'm going to come back in with my 1-inch round. Now, you don't necessarily have to use your 1-inch round. Flat. Sorry, God, I keep saying that. You don't have to use your 1-inch flat. Mostly that was just to get paint down pretty quick. But I'm going to come in and start looking at shapes that I like. So I like this shape. And you'll notice, because I've almost dried this paper, that paint's not rushing down in there anymore. So I'm going to add a little bit of dark along right in here. Now, I'm not going to outline this entire shape because I don't want to outline the cloud, but I want a little bit of dark right along that edge. So, and then I'll just kind of feather it out. I also want, I think, a little bit of dark in here. I'm not sure I really like this shape. It's kind of a straight line coming across there. I do like this little bit here. So what I'm going to do, and if you'll notice, I'm holding my brush kind of at an angle, and I'm using just this corner of my brush. You could also do the very same thing with a round brush and just use the point. I'm going to pull in this, and I'm going to just change that straight line a little bit by adding a a little more paint on top of where I had some. And then I'll feather that out a little bit. Now, real quick, I'll show you this painting again. This started out with peacock blue. You can see there's some there, a little bit here. And this area here that's white was lifted. You know, I got darker and darker shades of blues and purples as I was going along to start making it look stormy, but this started out the exact same way. Let's see. I like this shape over here, but not necessarily how big and round that is. So I think I'm going to come in over here. Maybe add a little dark there. And I just cleaned my brush out so I don't have any paint in it. And I want to kind of soften this. So I'm just going to add some water here. And you can see I pulled that paint over just with the clean brush. And I now have this little bit where it's much softer. And I can actually come in with a little bit of this Kleenex that's still pretty clean and kind of lift a little bit there. And now I've made that nice soft shape. Just didn't like the fact that it was completely round. So next week, we're going to do a little bit of brush skill work. We'll start out working on a little bit of brush technique, and then we'll move into actually starting working on a painting. Just so you know, I wanted to give everybody a chance to make sure that they had their you know, something to paint with by next week. So that's why I thought I'd go ahead and do this little demo first this week. I like this shape, sort of, but not really. I think I'm going to do I'm going to just put some paint down and then come back in with a fairly clean brush and just soften that so it kind of, see how that starts to, now I've dried out my brush. I've squeezed out my brush with my towel. Like I have a rag here. You could use a paper towel, whatever you want. So my brush is damp, but it's pretty dry, and I can go in and kind of pick some of that up, and that helps feather that out, just softening that. But also, if you look here, I can pick up this puddle that I have. I have a couple puddles here and here I want to get rid of. Right here. And just by using a thirsty brush, by squeezing it out so it's damp, but not, you know, full of water, I can pick up that excess water on the paper. So I think I'm gonna put that down, and I'm gonna start using a round brush just to make it a little easier. So I'm gonna grab my number 8 round. Right now it looks pretty ragged, but when I get it wet, you can see it makes a pretty fine point. And anytime you're using your round brush and say you're mixing paint over here, say I'm going to grab some more of this peacock blue, I can sit here and I can be pretty rough with the brush, mixing in, you know, even if I was mixing in some of this green color over here or something, and you can see that point is not quite there anymore. So as I pick it up, I'm going to roll the brush. So I just roll it like that, and it forms that point again. So now I have that really nice point, and I can come in and go, okay, well, I think I want a little more dark right in this area to kind of highlight that bit. In there, maybe right in And at some point, I'll flip this back around. Now I just cleaned out my brush, and I'm just kind of feathering this with a clean, wet brush. Just kind of feathering that out. You can see. Sometimes I'll roll the brush, and it picks up a little paint, but it's mostly water. And I can kind of feather that out. I definitely want to feather this. This is a weird shape that I've got going there. I do want a little more dark underneath here, I think. I don't want to outline that whole cloud. I'm going to drop some water on this. Now, this is damp, so it will form blossoms, which we'll get into at some point. Pick that up a little bit. And that's okay, particularly in skies. It's actually kind of, I like blossoms. A lot of artists won't, and I'll see if I can make one form. I'm just going to drop a little water right there, and you can see, you can see what's going on there. You can see it's forming this blossom. The water's pushing the paint away from the center where I dropped the water. So I'm going to end up with kind of this fuzzy, weird little blossom shape. And that's, sometimes you don't want them, and they're pretty easy to get rid of once everything's dry. But I tend to like them, and I like to force them sometimes, so I will purposely do stuff like that just because I like that texture. I use it a lot in skies. I use it a lot when I'm painting fields and trees, and it's just a handy thing. It makes, here actually you can see another one forming right there. I don't mind that there either. I do want a little bit of dark right in here, I think. Add a little bit more paint. And then come in and just with clean water, soften that into the rest of that. But you can see it's starting to, vaguely look like clouds, and I've only used one color so far. I want a little more dark, but not a lot of dark up in here. I want to kind of change the shape of some of these. So I'm going to kind of bring that in. And then clean my brush out, get some water, and then I can kind of roll this paint. Sometimes I'll come in and go, oh, well, I want a little wispy kind of looking bit. That's okay too. And then as we get over here, so I think I'm going to turn this over so I can start really thinking about what this sky is looking like. It looks like I got this pretty big cloud that's kind of coming up here and doing something. I need to break this up where I started to. It needs to be, I think, a little darker in some of those areas. So again, I'm going to grab some peacock blue for now. And I'm just going to come up into here, bring that down. And then this is still pretty wet there where I had added a bunch of water. It's not over here, so I'm going to actually add a little more water there and get it to run. And then I don't want this sharp line right there, so I'm going to just pick that back up. It's still fairly wet, so I can just come in and kind of pick it up with my brush, which was clean, but full of water, so I could just kind of wash that off and soften that. One thing, I am painting this direction now, but I kind of want this stuff, these kind of streaky things to kind of match what's going on over here with the shape that I luckily made. So I'm going to actually plop some dark paint here and let this, so I'm holding it up at an angle this direction now. And I'm just gonna let that run. And actually I'm gonna hold it at a kind of a diagonal shape. And then, so I have that, I can grab my paintbrush, clean it out, and just drop some water and get that to kind of do some interesting things. Just to give me some directional stuff that sort of follows the shape that I've got going on here. I may end up not liking that, and I can always change it later. I know everybody says, well, you know, once you paint something and it dries in watercolor, you're kind of out of luck, but that is not entirely true. Yeah, I don't mind that little streaky bit. That's kind of what I was looking for. I can even paint more in later, or now I can even come in, maybe I'll use my flat brush because it's a little bigger, and I can kind of come in and pick some of that up while it's wet. Give myself just kind of a, you know, you see the kind of light coming off of clouds and stuff sometimes where it's kind of, the sky is kind of streaky like this, and I like that. That's a little weird, so I'm just going to soften that with my brush. And right now it looks a little weird still, particularly on screen when I look at it, but that's okay. I'm going to do a little of that over here too. So I'm going to take some peacock blue. I'm going to hold this at a weird diagonal, and I'll let some dark blue right in here. And we'll come in with some water. That's starting to dry out. That's why I'm having some issues right there. The heat's going, and I have a fan going because it's so warm in here. I think I'm the well, no, George. Yeah, so you can kind of see that I'm getting a similar kind of streak coming off of that cloud. And then I can squeeze my paintbrush out and lift some of that back up. And I can even come in and kind of add a few more. And most of this, you know, where it looked like it was really white there, that'll fill back in. So it won't be quite that white later. But there, that's kind of okay looking so far. This is starting to form a weird line there that I don't like. So I need to come in with some more water right there. And I'm going to switch back to the round brush because that's a little bit too big. And I'm just going to add more water just to soften that line. You can see there's still a little bit of that line visible. I don't know if you can see that on the screen or not, but if I zoom in here, you can see there's still that line, but it'll be hardly noticeable when I'm done. Anybody have any questions so far or anything?
Well,
I know that if you've never done anything like this, it feels like you're jumping into the deep end. But again, this is just a demo. You'll be able to watch over and over and over again. We'll get into some of we'll get into the brush techniques next week, and then we'll start working on a painting. So I'm just softening this down here. I should have switched back to my flat brush. Basically just kind of coming in with water and softening that up down there. Don't know what that'll be, but you know, if I end up liking this sky, I can turn it into almost anything. Add just a bit more of this right in here. And a bit more here. And one of the things I've found really helpful is, you know, spending time looking at clouds when they're in the sky. but I take a lot of photos of clouds. You know, now back when I had to use a film camera, it was pretty expensive. But now with, you know, every phone having a pretty decent camera on it, and you can delete the crappy photos and not feel bad about it. It's not too bad. You're not wasting film. So, you know, the advent of digital photography has really made it nice to build collections of clouds and things. So just softening that up. So I have a pretty good base of this peacock blue. I'll put a little more right down in here, maybe. I don't like that. Put that back up. So now I want to think about some darker blues. So let's see. See if I can angle that enough to get more of the palette. So over here I have royal blue. Again, if you had something like Prussian blue or Antwerp blue, even let's say you were using cerulean blue and you wanted to use Prussian blue or something, you don't necessarily have to have the royal blue. You could use, you know, any of those kinds of blues. Let's see, I also have a color called indigo, which is, so this is Antwerp blue. It's going to look almost identical. This is indigo, but trust me, when I paint it on the thing, it looks quite a bit different. It's kind of a gray blue. It's real pretty. But for now, I'm going to go with this royal blue, which is a fairly dark blue, but it also lightens up, and it has a bit of a red tint to it sometimes. So I don't know what colors go into making the royal blue, but I'm going to make a little puddle right here on my palette. I am getting a little, you know, it's mostly paint. Well, it's still mostly water because I have a lot of water in the well. But I'm getting a fair amount of paint because I think down in here's, I need to refill it, and I haven't gotten around to it. So most of my paint that I have in the well is up here on the edge. So that's why I'm kind of doing this a fair amount, because that's still pretty dry up there. Add a little more water to that. And because I've been scrubbing up here quite a bit, I'm going to roll my brush again. And again, it's just like this. And you can see it gives me a nice little point. And now I'm going to look at places where I maybe want a little bit of darker sky, darker than this peacock blue. And I think I want some here. I don't know that I'll necessarily make this a stormy sky, but I do want a little bit darker blue in some of this sky. Here as well, maybe. And if I'm careful, I can kind of pull that out. If I'm careful, I can get this to kind of run back up into there. And sort of follow that same direction. If I end up liking it. If I don't, if I end up not liking what I've done, I can paint over that. I can make it darker. I can lift some of that out. I'm going to pick up. So I have this. It probably looks black on screen. At least it does on my screens. This is actually a pretty dark mix of royal blue, Hooker's green, which is this green right here. It's a dark green, and quinacridone violet, which is what this is, which is a kind of a darker purple, kind of a dark reddish purple. So that's what this mix is made up of. And it's mostly made up of the blue and the green with just a hint of that violet in there to kind of darken it up and make it a little grayer. I tend not to use black in anything I do. I don't use black paint. I will mix it. And it sometimes will have a tint of one color or the other, but rarely do I use. So I've got this, basically I just took royal blue, hooker's green, and I mixed this up into this kind of, let's see if that, oh, can't see it, sorry. I mixed this kind of green, blackish green gray kind of color. You can see as it gets over here, it's a little bit lighter. Maybe you can see that. Yeah, it still looks pretty dark, but it's a dark green, blue. I want to add a little more blue to it, so I'm going to grab a little more of the royal blue and mix that up. And the only reason I save stuff like this is because it's a shortcut for later, because I know I'm going to end up mixing some of this again. There are occasions when I'll come in and clean. You can see actually where at one point, you can kind of see where I cleaned, there's this sharp edge going across there. This all was pretty dark coming across here, and I went in and cleaned this entire portion of my palette up so I could use these lighter colors without getting too much dark color mixed in. Let's see, I'm going to come down in here, I think, with a little bit of dark. I'm going to kind of, this looks really dark right now, but I'm going to kind of come in and shape the bottom of this cloud. And my paper's gotten pretty dry, so it's not bleeding the way it normally would. So I'm going to come in and add a little more water. I can lift some of that back up. And all I'm doing really is just kind of thinking about the shape of the bottom of that cloud. You know, originally the bottom was right there. Now, because of this dark, I kind of extended this bit of the cloud down a little bit lower. And all that is just kind of some swoopy paintbrushes where I kind of was pushing my brush and pulling my brush. And then as I come back up in here, maybe I want to pull some of this dark up in there, but I don't want it to be very dark. I just want it to be a very subtle shadow on this cloud. I can even grab just a bit, come in here. So it looks really dark right now. I can add a little bit of color in there, and then I can completely clean my brush out and come back in and just add water and really lighten that up. And so just by moving it around and adding color, and I don't know if you noticed that, but I kind of scrubbed my brush. I do that sometimes. That's why my brushes end up looking kind of raggedy, which is why I don't mind, I don't mind doing that because this isn't a very expensive brush. If I was using, I used to have I still have it, I just don't know where it is. I have a Kolinsky Sable round. I think it was a 6 or a 7, maybe it was an 8, I can't remember. And that was, I got the brush for free, but it was like a $35 or $40 brush. Maybe more, I can't remember. It was a beautiful, just came to an excellent point. I love that brush, but by, some of the techniques I use where I push the brush, it's hard on brushes, and it can wear them out faster. And so I stopped using that brush because it lost its point. I still have it somewhere. I just can't find it. I put it away, I'm sure. But you can see, so I've added, a little bit of a shadow to that. Maybe the cloud kind of folds under and then it comes back over here. I don't know yet. It doesn't matter. I don't need to know that. This is looking weird. So before that completely dries, I want to come over here and soften this up. That was a spot where I was getting a blossom and I didn't like it. So I'm always kind of scanning the paint. Here I've got a little blossom. That almost looks like maybe it's rain or something. So I might leave that for now. Soften this edge because I don't know that I particularly like that. pull some of this dark blue. This is almost what I've mixed here is almost a Payne's gray. So you can actually buy Payne's gray. I have some somewhere. Generally, I mix it because it's slightly more vibrant, but you can just buy Payne's gray. It's a beautiful gray color, and use it directly out of the bottle or the tube. I just tend to, I quit buying it because I ended up mixing it most of the time anyway. And I thought, well, I'll save that money for a different color. So that was why I quit using it, not because I didn't like it. Let's see, I'm gonna put a little more of this kind of dark gray that I mixed up in here. Break up this cloud shape a little bit. Any questions so far?
No more ones. How come I can watch you do it and then I can't do it?
Well, this is just, years of practice. So that's a weird shape that formed right there that I don't like. What I'm going to do is actually a little more dark royal blue right in here. Because it felt like it was abruptly stopping. Let's see what happens there. And then I'm going to kind of lift some back out so I have a softer edge. So it's still not looking like much. I mean, it's starting to kind of look like clouds, but I've got a weird shape happening over here that I need to work out. And I think what I'm going to do is I've accidentally mixed some royal blue and peacock blue together. So it's a slightly brighter dark blue. And I'm going to bring that over here. Get rid of this weird line. And that happened because I had flow back and didn't completely outline, follow that original track of the cloud shape. I can even come back in, try to. I'm going to actually use my rag because it's a little sturdier. I can come in and kind of soften that a bit. Let's see. So I've got a pretty heavy gray right here. I feel like I need a little over here to balance it out. I had some going in there, but I feel like this little area needs some too. I don't know that I finished my thought about photos. So I do, like what I was saying is I have a bunch of photos, not just of things that I want to paint, but skies. Whether, it could be a sky over something that I would never paint in 100 years. Just because I don't find it interesting, like, I don't know. Now I can't think of something, but, like my neighborhood street. My neighborhood's not that interesting. But the skies that I get to the to the west, and even to the east sometimes, or south or north, whatever, they're pretty interesting. But the houses on my block are not, they're all kind of weird, wacky houses. Not that they're not interesting, but they're not, there's nothing special about them, really, except for nice people live there. But they, it's not the most interesting thing that I would paint. But I take pictures of those skies around my house all the time because I get, here in Farmington, or New Mexico in general, we get really cool cloud formations, sunsets, all that stuff. So, I take a lot of pictures of clouds and skies and different things. And I stick them in a folder and I look at them and I spend time looking at the clouds. So that's why this kind of comes naturally. I can kind of imagine what kind of cloud this is, where I've seen it before. So that's a good practice to get into, whether you're painting in watercolors or whatever. It's just a good thing to pay attention to what the sky looks like. Because I mean, there are times when I don't paint a busy sky at all. But in this case, because this is what I'm painting, I am painting a fairly busy sky. So this feels like it needs a little bit more dark. I say dark, but this is really a medium dark. Under here, like maybe that's not quite folding under enough. So if I add a little bit more of that, not quite as large a space as what I did before, now it's going to add some more volume to this. And something people who are starting out with watercolors for the first time, who've maybe painted with oils or acrylics before, they struggle with a little bit, is that you're painting from light to dark. Whereas on oil paints and acrylics, not always with acrylics, but and not always with oil paints, but you can basically paint from dark to light. If you have something that got too dark, you can cover it up with light paint later because they're more opaque. I mean, there are techniques where you can use oils and acrylics very similarly to watercolors, but for the most part, they're a building up of paint to get to light shapes. And that I know was the biggest kind of hurdle I had the first time, when I first started using watercolors, before I really got, my grandmother showed me how to paint with watercolors and my mom did as well. But there were things, because I had been mostly painting with acrylics and oils in high school and college, there were things that I kind of forgot. And one of those is that your lightest light is not, you're never going to have a light lighter than the white of the paper. So you can't, if you've got to really save your light areas, your whites, and you don't want to move too quickly into the darks. You'll see that I'm kind of picking and choosing. I put down a little light bit of dark, and let it dry, and then I came back and added a little more dark on top of it, and it's starting to look kind of like a cloud that's sort of folding under that direction. I'm not sure what's going on with this cloud right at the moment. Who knows? It may end up not looking like this at all. I'm not particularly liking this shape. I originally liked this shape, but I don't particularly like it now. It's dry. So I can just go in and kind of, it'll always be there. There'll be a bit of a ghost of that shape, but I can lighten it and even come back out here. So it's not as prevalent. So I can lift that back up. And now that's, that weird line of paint was really distracting me. And now it's there, that shape's there. I don't mind the shape, but it's not as distracting. So, I don't know, this one maybe a little dark too. Maybe what I need to do is pull in some of this same medium dark that I've done here. And make that a little bit darker, and then let it kind of feather out down into here with some just clean water. And it's okay if this cloud, this little bit of cloud here starts to get a little, if it's not quite as bright as this one, that's okay. It doesn't matter. Another thing that's good to remember when you're painting is that this is your painting. So just because I'm painting it one way doesn't necessarily mean that you have to paint it one way. And if we're using a photo as a source, it doesn't mean that you have to paint it the way the photo is showing whatever it is. There's many times where I'll use a photo as a source and I move things around. The sky's different, or maybe I add mountains where there weren't mountains because I feel like it needs some interest back there. Excuse me. Any of those, you know, I do any of those kinds of things. I felt like this needed some more dark. That little cloud burst of rain looking thing kind of disappeared, but I still want a hint of maybe some rain or something. If I ever figure out what this bottom is doing, I may come in and lift some rain out, and I'll show you guys how to do that many times over the next, over the next session of classes. But I just kind of wanted to give a little hint of that. I don't even know if it'll go that direction. Hint at it there too. But that's starting to look a bit like clouds in the sky. Like this shape right here. I just have water in my brush. This is where, like, if something's really stubborn, I could take this toothbrush and get it wet. I have to be a little careful because it will, scratch the paper and lift up the paper. But if I'm very careful, I can kind of come in and ever so lightly scrub. I mean, you don't want to do this kind of scrubbing because that'll tear the paper. But I can kind of scrub now. I don't think that's gonna make much difference. That kind of did stain a little bit, which is okay. But you can see I've knocked back that white a little bit, and I can actually add a little more paint to change that shape. And now that round bulby shape that I didn't like is gone. I liked it at one point, otherwise I wouldn't have painted around it, but it stopped working for the painting. But now you can see that's gone, and I have a much better shape that I like. That could still end up being weird, but it's less noticeable than it was. Not too shabby. I think I want to add a little bit of a highlight to these clouds. I'm trying to decide if I want to completely dry this. I mean, the paper, like down here, is completely dry. Most of this white area in here is pretty dry. I don't know that I want this blue dry. I don't like that shape. I'm just going to soften that while it's still wet. Soften that as well. And I'll just come back and lift that a little bit, ever so slightly. Yeah, I think I want to add some. Excuse me, I needed a drink of water. I think I want to add some color highlights to these clouds, maybe where the sun's hitting them. Even though technically when you get this kind of streaky thing going on like this, a lot of times because the sun's behind the cloud that you're looking at, That's okay. This isn't reality. This is my world that I'm painting here, and just as much your world on the one you're painting on. So this is where we can take the advice from Bob Ross and make it what we want, because it's our world. And I'm going to grab this. I'm going to grab this number 6 round, just because it's easier to work with a smaller brush for what I'm going to do. But I could do it just as easily with this 8 or even the 10. But I've got a nice little round brush here, and what I'm going to do is grab a little. Let's see. I am going to grab some of this here. I am going to clean the spot up on my palette. So you can see this is pretty dirty right here. It's kind of a purpley pink. I'm going to clean the spot up. Because I'm going to use this peacock. No, not peacock. I'm going to use this opera pink, which is this right here. And it's called opera, O-P. Wow, I just forgot how to spell opera. Why did I forget that? My mind went blank. That never happens. O-P-E-R-A. Wow, that was stupid. Can't believe I forgot how to spell that. You ever do that? Misspell and because you can't remember how to spell it?
Yep.
Just me then, right?
It's so cute. It happens to all of us.
But I just had a little brain fart there, and I could not think of how to spell opera.
Because you're in painting mode.
That's it, not in spelling mode. So I want to use opera. It's a really bright pink. I like it. This is Holbein opera, and you can see it's a nice bright pink. I'm going to get a little bit on my palette. I don't need a lot because it goes a little bit of opera goes a long way. I have this nice little puddle here, and then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to look at places where I might have highlights of color. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to come in, and first I'm just going to draw this kind of outline. So I'm going to try and keep my hand as much out of the way as possible. So I'm just going to kind of outline this kind of little highlight area on this cloud. Now this looks weird. It looks like I'm just drawing a line, which is what I'm doing. But while this is still wet, I can then clean my brush out, and I can come in. It's slightly damp. Cleaned it, slightly damp, and I can kind of soften this and move it around a little bit. So I have this kind of pink highlight on the cloud. It's still fairly white. But you can see I put that color down, and then I went back in and I kind of moved it around. If I need a little more, maybe in here I can kind of pull that in, give me a little bit more of a pink tint to that cloud right there. I can roll that, pick some of that back up towards the edge. And now I have a nice little pink hint of light there, some atmosphere. I could use over here, I have what's called pyrrole orange. That's this color right here. That's a really brilliant orange. Now you have to be a little careful with pyrrole orange, and that's P-Y-R-R-O-L. The more difficult word I remembered how to spell. But it starts off as this bright, strong. Ooh, dropped my phone. It starts off as this, and I spattered pyrrole orange all over. I don't know if you can see that. Won't hurt anything. But you can see it's this bright orange, but as you sorry about that, as you thin it with water, it becomes this salmon peach kind of color. So I'm going to come up here and kind of paint some, and I don't want it to dry out, so I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. I'm going to paint some right in there, and then come back in with a. I dropped some water on there, and then I thought it was too much, so I plopped my brush down onto my rag here and dried it just a skosh, not really. I just took out just a hint of the water, but let's see. Actually, I think I need a little bit more than I had. Too much out. But now I'm just going to soften this, and you can see it's turning into this kind of salmon peach color. And if I'm not careful, like what happened right there, it can actually stain the paper. This is the one kind of staining color that I use, but I really like it. So in order to get rid of that line, I just have to add some more paint. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to go into, I have a little of that pyro orange, but now I'm going to actually switch into a little, this is permanent yellow deep right here. So it's kind of an orangey yellow. Get a little on my brush. You can kind of see it's kind of an orangey yellow. That's probably a little too much paint. That's okay. I'm going to get a little more water, and I'm going to kind of fuse this into that orange. So I'm going to need to add a little more of that pyro orange just because that line is so strong. But then I can come in and kind of add this. Let's see, I'm going to move in. I'm going to go back to this larger brush. I can add this little highlight of this kind of bright yellow orange in here. So it looks like there's a lot of sun bouncing off that cloud. That one's just going to be stuck. I don't know if you can see that line on camera, but if I zoom in on it, you can see where I've got that line right there. If I leave it alone for now, I make, right now it's wet, so it's not going to cover very well. And I can easily turn stuff into mud. So I want to kind of be careful. You'll notice that like all this blue around here is now dry, or fairly dry. So I'm not, that's why this isn't turning into a weird green mud with this yellow here. And it's because that blue is dry. Had I not waited till the blue was dry, I would have been in trouble. But now I've got this kind of fiery orange on top of the cloud. Maybe I want a little bit more down in here of that. I like that kind of fiery orange. So I'm going to add just a hint of that down on the bottom here as well. This is kind of maybe picking up whatever that light is hitting. Pull some of that up into there and then let it kind of fuzz out. Just a hint of that. And maybe I want to come back in. I have some pyro orange dots on there that maybe I want to just kind of make those look like they were on purpose. Just by adding a little bit of pyro orange into the mix. Maybe let's go back to some of this opera. Maybe there's some of that up in here. Let's add a little bit of that. I'm basically just adding color highlights to these clouds. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sorry about that. My phone started ringing. I had to hit decline. Sometimes it doesn't work on paintings that I've done, but that's okay because then I learn, oh, well, I shouldn't have talked so much while I was doing that bit. Or I should have been a little bit quicker. I do feel like maybe this needs a little hint of that bright orange right in there too. Not a lot, just a wee bit, just to give that little part of the cloud a little bit of that light that's kind of hitting. Feels like it would be down in there as well. And right now, you probably can't tell this, but in my head, I'm slightly frustrated with this painting. And that's the every painting kind of goes through a what I like. Well, my mom actually came up with this. She called it the angry teenage, or actually she called it the angry monkey stage. I think I called it the angry teenage stage. I don't know, but it's kind of this, when you start off, a painting's nice and sweet and like a little kid, and then as it gets kind of towards the middle of being, the middle portion of the painting, it gets into this kind of really angry, ugly teenager time. Very difficult. And sometimes, people will, and I've been guilty of this myself, will get frustrated with it because it's not quite going the way we think it should. And that's that angry teenager time. When it's difficult and it's annoying and basically a teenager. You got to push through that and get to the rest of the painting. It's okay. Sometimes paintings never work out. I'm going to add a little more of this pyro orange up in here. Get rid of that line. Sometimes, I'll get to the end of a painting and I'll think I'm happy with it, and then I realize that it's not worth saving, but it actually is pretty rare. I mean, I have a lot of paintings that I would never show people, but I save every single one of them because I've learned something from them. So even when I have a painting that's a failure, it's not a failure, it's just a lesson. So that's the way to look at it. But most of the time, if you push through that really difficult, annoying portion where maybe the painting's not that much fun, something happened, like that line is really bugging me. That's just that difficult teenage time. So if you just push through that, usually I will come up with something to fix whatever I did. And that's really what I like about watercolor, is it kind of forces you to make decisions that you might not have to make with other medium. You can usually cover something up quite easily.
Is that the time that you just keep pushing through, or do you come back to it?
Well, sometimes when it's really difficult, I'll stop and wait and come back to it. But a lot of times, if I just stop for a few minutes, that's enough of a break.
Okay.
Sorry, this flipped over on me. Let me get this. There we go. So a lot of times, just spending a few minutes, like right now, I'm a little disappointed with some of the bits of this. But if I stop and I take a minute and I set back from the painting, I can push my chair back and kind of I can look at it and go, okay, well, I like that bit and I like that bit. I don't like that little line that formed, but if I keep, I'll ignore that for now, and I'll go on, and eventually that line may just completely disappear. It's not as visible on camera as it is in person until if I get down on there, you guys, it's there. But not dollars to donuts, it's going to completely disappear if I ever do something else with this painting. If I come up with something going on down here and I continue whatever I'm doing in the sky. You know, this is now feeling a little abrupt, this end right here. So I feel like this dark gray stuff needs to maybe come out here a little bit. Maybe, maybe there's a secondary kind of cloud. You know, maybe this cloud right here actually comes all the way over, but there's a bit of shadow there, and it's all the way under here. So that shape felt abrupt right there. So if I come back in and add, I'm basically grabbing that dark, that gray that I mixed, which was the violet, the hooker's green, and the royal blue, and I'm just going to add a little bit more up in here. Maybe like that shape. I mean, right now that looks weird, but if I come back in now, I've cleaned my brush out, and I soften this side. So maybe what's going on over here, like, I don't think I meant to do that, but that's all right. In fact, I know I didn't, so I'm going to change that shape. I didn't like those two bumps. That was weird looking. So I'll just completely get rid of that shape. And then I'll come back down here and soften this up. The great thing, one of the great things about watercolor is, you know, you can make something look as realistic as you want or as abstract as you want. I tend to kind of lean towards the middle where it's a little on the abstract side, but mostly impressionistic side right there, kind of in that happy zone where it looks like something, but it's not necessarily, you know, super realistic. That helped a little bit, I think, moving that dark all the way across. You know, I started moving in that direction, so at some point I could see adding some storm type stuff going on in here. This ended up being a little more green, so I want to add a little bit of that. That starts to look kind of stormy when you get a little more green in the sky. That, I don't really like those little white things right there. I want to just knock them back a bit. They're still there, but I added a little bit of, you know, that color on the top of them, so it pushed them back a little bit. So maybe it's dark down here, but the sun's coming in, and that juxtaposition of bright light against some dark, stormy area is something that I like a lot. So, you know, that intrigues me a lot. So I tend to do that sometimes. Not sometimes, I do it a lot. Just because it's fun and I enjoy it. And people seem to like it as well. So they may not know that's what they like, but just a little more of that dark down in there. And maybe, so now I don't have a whole lot of paint on my brush. I can kind of come in and add some more kind of shadowy shapes in some of this area. Now I'm holding my brush kind of like a pencil on the side, and I'm just kind of dry brushing a little. Might pick up a little more paint. Water, clean it off just a bit. Now I'm just kind of using the side of my brush to make strokes. So basically it's just, let me see, I got a little scrap of paper here. Basically, I'm just doing this kind of motion. You know, there's a lot more paint on my brush right now than there was here, but that's kind of the shape I'm, you know, the motion I'm making. I'm just kind of pushing my brush back and forth, making these kind of dry shapes. They're somewhat wet, but that's what's called dry brushing, where you, you know, you just kind of barely touch the paper and it's not that wet, and you have a little bit of color in there. So that's all I'm doing right there. Let's pick up a little bit more. Just adding some little darker spots on that cloud. It's a little hard to tell, at least on my phone. Looking at that. Just added a bit more dark in there. But see, this is starting to look like one, kind of cloud formation here. It comes down into here. Maybe I've got another kind of cloud formation here that kind of bends in and comes back out and makes this kind of thing up here, that mushroomy shape up there. They don't necessarily look like real clouds, but they kind of do. So that's kind of, a quick, sort of fun demonstration on skies. I could have stopped when it was still just peacock blue and a few clouds. That would have been fine. I could have stopped when it was just a little bit more royal blue and the clouds. If I wanted to, I could stop here, or at least pretty close to here. I feel like maybe I need a little more of this green kind of stuff coming on over here. Feels like that's a little too bright blue. It needs a little bit of this gray green. And that looks like a lot of it right now, but in a minute I'll tone that down just a skosh here. Too much that I pulled up over there. But don't get caught up too much on it looking perfect, looking like mine, or looking like something else, or even looking like, say you're looking at a photo of clouds. Don't necessarily get hung up on the fact that the cloud, that whatever you're looking at isn't quite what your painting's turning out. I always say that every time I start a painting, I'm just practicing. That's the way I look at it. I'm just practicing, I'm having fun, I'm trying out new things. So that way, if it doesn't work out, I don't feel too bad, because I was just practicing. Even when I'm doing commission work, I have to tell myself that. This feels like it needs a little more. Because otherwise, I get all tense. In fact, I will psych myself out sometimes, thinking, oh, this has got to be perfect for this client. So I just say, okay, well, it's practice. See, I don't know what I'm doing right there. It feels weird. I think I need to let it dry for a minute. But I'll tell myself, okay, it's just practice. I'm just having fun. I'm just playing around. And then when it works out, it's a happy moment. But if it doesn't work out, I keep sticking my finger in the paint while I was trying to move it. If it doesn't work out, then you're not too broken up about it because it was just practice. And now I've lost my other point that I was going to make. I had 2 points I was going to make, and I've lost it. I apologize. This feels like it needs to be softer. But very rarely is something a complete lost cause. Usually I can get, unless the composition is bad. I've had, the majority of the paintings that I've done that I didn't think worked weren't due to what was happening on the paper with the paint. It started way back with my composition. So like this was taken, it's a photo that I used as a source, and it had a house like this and this little shed kind of thing. But the house was way over here. The shed was, behind a tree, but the tree was kind of out of focus. I didn't know what was going on there. None of this stuff existed. I can't remember what was going on in the background, but it was, you know, it was just kind of plain. I don't think there were mountains in it at all. I think it was probably originally a photo taken in like West Texas or something. But I made it look different. I wanted mountains back there, and I wanted this field back there, and I didn't exactly know how this tree was, so I kind of decided, oh well, there's not going to be a lot of detail in the tree. Same with these. There were trees, but they were actually further away from the house. I felt like they needed to be closer up to the house, if I remember right. But you know, there was a whole lot of stuff there. I couldn't see what was going on in the barn. So I just kind of decided, well, it needs something going on in there. So I'm just going to make stuff up. So I have these kind of pieces of wood. You know, all that is lifting stuff back out. I have this barrel over here. You know, I have these random, you know, things that maybe look like beams and posts and stuff. And maybe rope or something tied up in there. Who knows what that is? Maybe these are some fence posts going across. It doesn't matter. It's just some texture that's in there. That I kind of made my, you know, I took that dark and made it my own. Same with if we come over here on the window and this door, these were all dark, but you know, I felt like they needed to break up a little bit. So this one I broke up before I didn't even have to add anything to that because I didn't completely fill in the dark area. So just little things like that go, you know, when I finished this, I was like, it's all right. But by adding just these few little lifts, and then I came back into the road and lifted some of this stuff back out, I took it to that next level. And I made it my own. It's no longer the photo of East Texas or West Texas or wherever the heck it was, or Oklahoma, or I can't even remember where I took the photo, but heck, it could have been eastern New Mexico for all I know. You know, it's pretty flat there too. This road wasn't here. I added things that I felt needed to be there. You know, there was kind of these kind of, it looked like maybe two ruts where a car had once passed by, or a tractor or something. I turned it into a road. I wanted it to be a road kind of pulling you into the painting. The only time I've had problems where I've discarded a painting was where I had a bad composition. And sometime I'll try to find one of those. Or I shouldn't say the only time, but the majority of the time it's because it's a bad composition, not because I've done something with paint that I didn't like. I do have some of those too, but, and I'll show you some of those sometime. But anyway, any questions? Concerns?
Oh,
I'm kind of relieved I don't have to draw clouds.
No, I never draw clouds. Yeah. If I drew a cloud, it would end up looking, you know, it would end up looking like this.
Yeah.
That would be the cloud.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. So I don't ever draw clouds. In fact, even if I know I'm going to like paint a sky, and I'm trying to get generally like, well, I'll show you this painting again over here. This one right here doesn't actually look like the sky I was painting when I painted it, but the shapes are fairly similar. The colors are similar. And it was just a photo of clouds and stuff that I was going off of. But, you know, I kind of was like, oh, well, okay, that shape kind of looks like that. And those are the colors that were in the sky. But I wasn't really concerned with trying to draw that complete, you know, that verbatim. And then that other stuff I just made up because, so even when I'm actually setting out, looking at a photo of clouds, I won't draw those clouds.
Yeah, I like the abstractness of it.
Yeah, I think you end up with a more interesting sky
Mhm.
when you're not trying to plan out.
Right.
You know, if it's the you know, these buildings and things and even these trees, I drew the general shape of this tree and these trees right here, but I didn't really draw them very carefully. The only thing I really kind of planned out was this stuff, you know, the general shapes of things.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, you know, you don't have to get very detailed in your drawing, even if you're doing a painting, but especially with skies. I don't ever draw a sky. I just know, oh, I maybe I'm going to do this kind of a sky, or a lot of times when I'm doing the painting, and this is the reason I paint skies last. Sorry, my watch came apart here. I'm trying to put the band back together. When I'm painting a sky, I do it last because I like the rest of the painting to inform me what the sky is going to look like.
Mhm.
So if it's a bright sunny day in my painting, I'm not going to paint a really stormy sky. But because I ended up making this so dramatic and kind of, you know, I had this dark shadow going across,
Mhm.
and you know, I had these pretty dramatic shadows here, and you know, I felt like this deserved a bit of a kind of a dramatic sky as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, didn't plan any of that.
Yeah.
I just used the toilet paper or the Kleenex, and then go, oh yeah, that was a cool shape, or I don't like that shape. So what if I pick up a little bit more here?
So where do we watch? How do we watch this recorded?
So I will upload it to YouTube, and I'll send you the link. It'll be
Okay.
a private link,
Okay.
and I'll email it to you guys,
Okay.
and then you can watch it on YouTube. I for my other classes, I use the college's thing, but it's a little complicated to get into that. I can't even remember what it's called now. Through Canvas and all that kind of stuff, it's just kind of complicated.
Keep it easy.
Yeah, I figured with Encore, you know, we're not actually grading anything really. I mean, those of you who are taking it for credit will get an A, or whatever, a satisfactory is what it is. Those of you who are auditing it won't have to worry one way or the other. But I lost my train of thought. But you know, and so I didn't want to deal. I don't like to deal with Canvas because again, it can get a little complicated trying to figure things out. And I don't, you know, everybody knows how to get to YouTube. You just type in youtube.com, or you click the, you know, I'm going to send you the link. You'll just click on it and get to watch it.
Yeah.
So, and the cool thing is, you should be able to save that link. You know, it'll be there forever. So you can go back if there's something we do later on in the semester, or if even for some reason you want to watch this sky demonstration again, you can come back and watch it later. So,
Okay.
so I like to do that. It's simple and easy, and no passwords involved, and
Yeah.
nobody likes passwords. I hate passwords. I have to keep track of my dad's passwords besides mine, and I have enough trouble keeping track of mine.
It's a panic attack when anybody asks for a password.
Oh, it really is. So I thought if I do it with YouTube, it's just a boom. So,
That's good.
and I will send out the link for the Zoom meeting, but it'll be the same every time.
Okay.
So if you hang on to that email, you should be in good shape.
Okay.
But if for some reason you can't find it because it, you know, got misfiled or thrown away, or it's below a bazillion other emails, don't worry about it. I'll send it out again, probably on Friday.
Okay.
And so it'll be kind of there closer to the day.
Perfect.
And
What's
then
the
when,
next step?
oh, go ahead.
What's the next step? So next
Uh,
Monday?
So next Monday, next Monday, we're going to start on, we're going to do I'm going to have you guys do a few brush techniques. So I want to make sure everybody has their brushes and their paper and their paints. I'm going to show you a few actual ways to use the brush. It's pretty easy for me to just do stuff and you guys go, well, what are the strokes he's using? So I want to go through some of the strokes that I use with my brushes.
Okay.
So I'm going to have you guys do some exercises with me. And sometimes I'll do these just to warm up. I didn't today, so I felt a little clunky when I first started painting because I haven't painted in a few weeks because I've been busy with a bunch of other stuff. So if I haven't painted in a little bit, I get kind of rusty. So I will generally, if I haven't painted in a while, I will generally start off doing some of these little techniques and things just to loosen up and remember what it feels like to put the paint on the paper, that kind of thing. So we'll do a little bit of that. And then I will also send you an image and a sketch of what I think we'll work on as well.
Okay,
So I'll send that out on Friday.
okay.
So that'll be so just, make sure you have your paints and stuff and then I think that's the only homework you guys have. So,
Okay.
and then I like to do, like today we won't, but at the end, I like to reserve the last like 35 minutes or so, unless we've just started something, then I won't do it. But I like to reserve the last 35 minutes of class or so to kind of look at if what people were painting along with me and give you a little constructive criticism on it, say, oh, okay, that's working really well. Or you might look at this kind of thing, that kind of stuff just to help you. I found it works better in person when we're teaching the class, when we're all in one room. I'll paint for a little bit. You guys will watch me. Then I'll let you go do stuff. Then I'll walk around and look at everybody's stuff, and everybody can get up and walk around and look at their stuff. We'll paint for a little while, and then I'll do another step. And I kind of break it down into steps. Whereas here, I was just kind of going along. I found it easier to do it this way on Zoom versus the way I normally do it in real life. In real life, I like it, because I can walk around and look at everybody's stuff and kind of comment. And it moves fairly easily, but here it just felt a little clunky to be stopping all the time and looking. So I like to kind of paint through, unless somebody needs me to explain something or whatever. And, there's always questions and things like that, or if you need me to show you something else, I'll do it again, show you something again, I can do that, or explain something again, I can do that. But then like I said, I like to reserve that last 30 minutes or so to kind of look at everybody's paintings. And so that's kind of the structure that I have.
Sounds good.
And a lot of over explaining, because I feel like I probably made that much more complicated sounding than it really is.
Sounds good.
So I guess with that, we'll sign off for the evening. It's 9:01. So the class actually ends at 9:10, but I don't know if you're like me, 9 o'clock rolls around and you're thinking, man, bed sounds really good.
Exactly. Thank you, Michael.
Oh yeah. So you guys have, what's that?
If you got just another minute or so, I would like to have you criticize the last painting we did last fall.
Oh yeah, sure. For sure, yeah.
Just to throw it up, because I did some stuff you said, and I don't remember how to throw it in front of you.
Oh yeah, here, I'll put you on spotlight real quick. And
This was the one.
well, I had COVID in between there, and I'm not too sure, but that looks familiar. Let me take a little screenshot real quick.
I don't remember doing that one at all, Michael.
No, that's all right. Heck, this could have been.
Looks really good, though.
Yeah, it does look nice. There you go. I got it.
It was the only one I worked on since we last met.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I got a screenshot. Let me find it. There it is. And I will open it in Photoshop, and then we can.
Michael, I was just gonna ask, where do you buy those little containers to put your paint in?
Oh, this little thing.
Little tiny containers, yeah.
I bought. My mom actually found these. She found them on Amazon, and it was a set of 2 of these. It came with the little box, and it came with the little beading jars. These are used to sort beads for. That's what they were originally intended for. You can get them with the screw-on caps. Janie has a set that have the press-on caps that actually work a little bit nicer. I always have to clean the threads out on these screw-on caps. You can see if I hold this up, you see how gunky they get. So the press-on caps work a little bit better. You can kind of see there's all sorts of paint in there. They do get kind of locked up a little bit, but they work really well.
They don't tube of paint, but the paint, once you've emptied, like say half of the tube, the rest does not dry out. The rest of the tube.
No. I put, you put the cap back on and like I'll show you here. Let's see, where's some Antwerp blue? Antwerp blue is over here.
And in those little containers, they don't dry out?
It does dry out, but the tube doesn't. Like, well, I can get this. There it goes. Like, I'll just add a little more Antwerp blue to my Antwerp. Or wait, is this Antwerp blue? Yeah. I'll add a little more Antwerp blue. You can see it just. Well, maybe you can see.
And you've had that quite a while?
Oh yeah, this tube's like a couple of years old.
Oh, really?
I just added a lot to that.
Yeah.
Now, what I do, like it dries out. So if I can get this, this is peacock blue in this particular one, and you can see it's dry. What I do is I let them dry. I come home and I take the caps off, and I let them dry out, and then I'll put the cap back on. I just reconstitute it with water.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can just like if I got this wet.
You just put the drops of water in there and use what you need.
I just put the drops of water in there, and then
Okay.
yeah, you can see now I've got paint on my finger. So that was
Yep.
100% bone dry.
So it's okay for them to just turn completely dry then?
Yeah, in fact, I recommend it because if you leave the caps on, and like in the winter, it's not so bad, but a couple of times I've left the caps on and then left them in my car for a few days because I was too lazy to get them out of my car and bring them into the studio, and because I was busy, or when I was working for the city, I would come back from class, I'd throw everything in the truck, it'd be late at night, I'd get home, like 9:30 or 10 o'clock because it takes forever to pick everything up. So they would sit in my car for a couple of days because I wouldn't get back to the studio for a day or two. And mold will grow in your paint. Even Holbein, like Tom Lynch used to always say, well, mold won't grow in Holbein paint. That is not entirely because they don't have as many, like there might be impurities in the paint. They're not quite as pure, some brands as other brands. But and now he uses Sennelier paint, which I'll spell sometime for you because it's French. SennelAir, I think, or something like that. I'll look it up. I can't remember. Anyway, he'll tell you that those won't mold. But if you get anything like a cat hair or whatever in some dust, whatever in your paint, if you leave it just dust from that'll cause mold to grow in your paint. So that's why I always uncover them, let them dry out, and then just reconstitute them. Other artists will tell you you have to add fresh paint every time. You don't.
Okay.
In fact, I find it easier to control if I just get it wet. If it's 100% dry, like that Antwerp blue I just added is super wet. And if I stuck my brush in it, a ton of paint would just jam up into the bristles, and I'd have way too much paint in my my brush. So that's another way of controlling how much paint you have in your brush.
Okay. Thank
So-
you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. So
The,
yeah.
the painters that have beads and get the snap on.
yeah, they're just beading jars. And my mom found them on YouTube. I think she just looked up beading jars.
Okay.
My
And
son keeps fishing lures in them.
say that
I
again.
don't- He keeps fishing lures in them, small
Yeah.
fishing lures.
Yeah,
Okay.
you
And I don't know if he got them at a sportsman's place or what, but he's got a deal just like that. And he's got all these little lures inside.
yeah, they would make great things for fishing lure. I mean, I think they're just were originally developed for beading supplies, but yeah, fishing lures, any of that kind of stuff. Particularly like the really small hand-tied flies,
Right.
that would get perfect.
Fly fishing, crappie fishing, right. That's what he,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would just look up that, or you could even look up, I don't know if they'd show up under fishing tackle or not. I don't know, but I know they show up under beading.
Okay. So much. Good night.
Oh, good night. Okay, so Tommy, let's look at your. Let me share my screen really quick. Okay, so overall, I think this is looking really nice. I'm wondering if there's a couple of thoughts I have here.
okay.
One is that it could almost just be like that part of the painting, because there's so much interesting thing going on here, or maybe, but short of that, I don't know that I necessarily would do that. I think that this needs something to help pull your eye over here. So I think you have these nice shadows down here. I would almost, like, this is working pretty good to pull your eye. This feels like it's where you want everybody to be looking, because the most stuff is going on right here. You have these nice buildings, although this is quite nice. I almost feel like it's two different paintings. I almost feel like you could come in, because that's really cool. Like, I didn't straighten it out or anything, but like that almost looks like something. Where you could just do a little more with the sky, and because these trees are really nice. And then, whoops, and then this is almost something there by itself. Maybe pull that back out so that, but short of doing that, I think you really only need, let me get out of that again. Whoops. Actually, sometimes all it takes is cropping something properly.
Right.
I'm wondering if, like, I wouldn't necessarily crop out this stuff that's down here. It's just the photo's kind of crooked and I didn't spend any time straightening it out. But you could almost, because this is so nice, and I don't want, I mean, you could do something like that. I don't know. I kind of like how this kind of peters out to not a lot, so it doesn't really pull your eye out.
Yeah.
Let's see. I feel like there should be, I think you could just crop a little bit off of this outer edge over here.
Okay.
and kind of focus in on what this more, all this stuff.
Well, yeah, what bugged me was the bottom.
What's that?
I said what bugged me was the bottom, the,
Yeah.
the lower portion.
Wait, I didn't quite make that out. You kind of broke up a little bit.
I said what bugged me was the lower portion. The shadowy areas on the bottom.
Uh-huh. Oh, you'd lose that?
Well, I don't know.
You
I like
could,
that.
I mean, that's not, I don't mind that. I still might have, what my thought was, even, I mean, if you do, actually, that's not too bad if you did that, kind of cropped it somewhere in there. That's kind of nice. What I would do is maybe bring in a little bit of shadow, because you've got this fairly dark, to me, and it doesn't necessarily matter, but it kind of looks like, the sun is coming from over here. The light source is coming from over here.
Right.
So I might put a little bit of a shadow. It doesn't have to be big or anything, but a little bit of a shadow kind of coming off this side, these sides of these barns here.
Okay.
I don't know that you necessarily need the shadows at the bottom, like you were saying. I do like that fence, but even if you cropped it up to here, you still have that kind of fence kind of pulling you in. I might, what I might do, here's a thought. I'm gonna real quickly crop this just so we're looking at it kind of without that. But what I might do is I like these little fence posts here, but what I might do is come in and I'm just going to use black because that's what I've got on here. But I might kind of make this one get a little bit bigger, and maybe this one. Whoops, I'm having trouble drawing with my mouse, but maybe this one gets a little bit bigger, and then
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then maybe have one that kind of comes up big, like really big. I can't draw with a mouse very well, so I just add, add a little bit of, and that as they get bigger, they'll start to really give you that sense of depth.
Right, right.
And then these can be just small, that the fence kind of wraps around like that.
I like
They
that.
could be angled, like, some of these could be angled, like maybe they're a little off for, whatever,
Yeah.
that's fine. But they don't necessarily have to be, but it does add a little more interest because it, like this one being angled this direction kind of pulls you in also.
Right.
So, if you have this one angled, like I wouldn't maybe angle that one at all. And maybe this one would be slightly angled back the way I have it, just a little bit, but,
Got you. Got you.
but I think that might actually be all you need, because like the trees that you've got going, like all these trees are really lovely. Like I love this lost kind of shape up here where the tree kind of, sort of fuzzes out into the sky. And same with like this area here, you've got just the right amount of dark going on in here with a little bit of that light. So that's really nice. And your buildings are really nice. I think just a hint of a, little bit of the shadow coming off.
I looked at that, and the way I had the sun coming was the shadows were going to be behind the buildings,
Oh, right.
and they wouldn't be there. But I agree with you. Why not show a hint in front?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be much, just like a little bit to kind of help anchor it right in there. And I think, just a little bit right in there.
Okay.
And then, yeah, like you said, it'd be behind it. You could even, if you needed to, like you've got this nice red, I don't even know if you need to. Like,
See, I don't even know that that's snow. To me, it looks like snow, and that's what I decided it was.
Yeah, it
but-
does kind of look like snow. Maybe it's a really early snow. The fall leaves haven't quite changed yet, and I mean, it doesn't matter. It looks really nice. I like what you've got going on there.
Okay. Well, thanks for looking at it for me. And
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think it was just a little too big. You had a lot of empty space out over here, and some of that down here. And I think just by kind of pulling in the focus a little bit.
Okay.
So
Hey, listen, I know you're tired. Thanks for taking the time.
anytime, not a problem at all.
Get your class.
All righty.
All right. Good night.
We'll see you. Good night.